Southwest Construction Products out of it. We can produce shavings, posts and poles. We can produce mulch and compost. Those are somewhat finite markets, so when we're talking, or the scale that we're talking at, we're going to generate so much material, we actually have to find bigger markets. We've got to find homes for this amount of material. And on a lot of this, because it's so low value, because the trees are small, because they aren't a higher value product or able to be made into a higher value product, we have to look to energy markets. Energy is something we all need, be it for heating or cooling, be it for the production of biofuels or electrical generation. And those have, from the business side, a market depth that can handle what we produce. And while we're doing this, not only in the woods cutting trees, but in making all these products, we're creating jobs in our communities, mostly in the rural communities, where we need them, where the people exist.
We did some work with the legislature this past session, so the 2014 session, and it was New Mexico Forest Industry Association and the Nature Conservancy together. And we found the willingness of legislators to take this issue seriously. We drafted a memorial that would call for the interim committee of the legislature to develop a long-term state funding plan. And this memorial was passed unanimously by both the House and the Senate. So now we have the ability to move forward with a statewide plan for funding. So now it's not about the Rio Grande Water Fund anymore. It's about a statewide wildfire and water source protection fund. Obviously, you all in this community, if this is something of interest to you, could have a lot of influence to help our legislators make a decision to actually carry this forward. It has to have funding with it, because that, while the markets, what Brent talked about, the end products, we're in a chicken and an egg situation where you can't just go out and guarantee that there's a big supply for somebody to come in and set up a 5 megawatt electricity plant. It's going to take us a while to get there. We estimate we're looking at a transition period of probably at least 10 years. And during that 10-year period, we're going to have to pay to have the thinning done. And that has a price tag. It's kind of a hard one to estimate, but we're estimating around $21 million a year. So if you count in what the Forest Service and other federal agencies are already putting in, we're kind of left with about a $12 million gap. And that's where a statewide fund that creates the money to scale up in all of the red places around the state, not just the Rio Grande. That's what we hope will be wrapped into this statewide funding plan. And it's our understanding that the kind of kickoff for this will be at a meeting of the Water and Natural Resources Interim Committee soon. I think the date is set.
Yeah, we actually confirmed that we're on the agenda along with a lot of other stakeholders today. And I know this is of concern to this area because on the House side, Representative Zach Cook carried this before. And it did. Unanimous support both sides of the aisle, no argument. And both Representative Cook and Senator Bill Griego, also that covers part of Lincoln County, carried these memorials, and both of them, especially on the Senate floor, the House floor, they just, it was no concern, went right through. Senate floor, we had a number of senators getting up and saying, thank you for bringing this forward. We want to do this, let's do this, and let's do it this summer. So, as part of it, and I'll go up to the title for a little bit, coordinated, leveraged, And that sounds like food, right? What a set of words, but it means something. It means the agencies, the industry, the communities, the people coordinating what they do. Everybody coming to the table, helping leverage everybody else's money. Nobody has enough resources to pay for this on their own. We've got to pull everybody together. Again, all hands on deck, and let's move forward with this. And everybody, water users, urban areas, rural areas, federal, state, local, nonprofits, the industry, we've all got to come together to make this happen. And that's what this water fund concept is about. So we've had the watershed studies underway. In the Rio Grande, there is an advisory board that's formed around this. And that advisory board, we'll get to a slide here in a little bit, that shows a lot of people on it. There has been a comprehensive plan that was in review. It's now finalized. There's not going to be a lot of printed copies. It's going to go up on the web. It's going to be a living document. It has to change over time. We're actually launching the water fund for the Rio Grande this summer in July. And in this interim period between coming up on the 60-day legislative session, we're working on that long-term funding plan. I know it's going to be at least the Water and Natural Resource Committee, probably the Legislative Finance Committee, maybe even some others. There's some economic development, there's some tribal committees that need input into this. And that long-term funding plan, we see having things like donations to a water fund or a similar mechanism in different areas, from water users' fees, from corporations, from interested parties. We have people coming with skin to the game. We also see the state taking a major role in this. We've heard both from the legislature and from the state of New Mexico in general, this is of concern to us. We want to do something. Let's do it. And I do see the state putting more resources into this than they ever had before. Local, municipal, tribal matching funds, again, communities can come to the table. How they engage, one of the big part, I talked about leveraging before, coordinated leveraging. If you want things to happen in your area, a great way to leverage state and federal funds is to not only bring resources, human resources to the table, but bring money to the table. We're able to compete for state and federal resources much better if we have money on the table, go and bring something to match it. Private investment. This is one thing that's not being leveraged. It's not at the level that it needs to be. I will say from the industry standpoint, and that's why we need the long term, we're willing to make investments. But we need to see similar long-term commitments from communities, from the state, to make those investments happen. When I have to go out and either find private investments or borrow money that's going to take me 10 years to pay back, I want to know that I have 10 years ahead of me, work ahead of me, product ahead of me to get that paid back. Because that private investment part is important to making this work. And then federal appropriations for hazardous fuel reductions, for all the many pieces there. When we bring local and state and private investments to the table and water user fees and corporate donations, we're actually able to compete more effectively for more federal dollars. I don't see the federal budget increasing, but I see our ability to compete for those dollars that come to New Mexico being improved.
This slide shows the many diverse stakeholders who are engaged in the Rio Grande Water Fund. A lot of them are also engaged on this issue statewide. we have a chronic problem of leaving groups off, and so I apologize now if I can already think of a group that should probably be on here that's not. But let me start up in the upper left. So the water utilities in both Albuquerque and Santa Fe are key partners and have been at the table in the advisory board from the very beginning. They see themselves as not being the only funder of watershed and water source protection funding, but they see themselves as one of the funders. The New Mexico Association of Counties is going to be meeting in a few weeks, or actually next week, and making a decision about whether they're officially endorsing this, because a lot of the county commissioners are already participating and endorsing. The business community has been a surprising ally for us for the comprehensive plan. We have endorsements of both the statewide Association of Commerce and Industry and the Greater Albuquerque Chamber of Commerce. This is a new partner for us, certainly. Sportsmen and conservation groups and recreation users, you would expect them to be interested. Universities contributing their expertise, as we've already mentioned. The federal agencies, Forest Service has also been at the table from the beginning. We've worked primarily in the Rio Grande waterfront area with the Carson, the Cibola, and the Santa Fe, but also with the regional office. And I would say there's pretty strong support because, you know, if you work for the Forest Service, this is a problem you care about too. A number of other, I guess what else is unique about the federal agencies is that you have water and land management agencies who don't usually interact with each other. So Forest Service and the Army Corps of Engineers, for example, building some new relationships which are important for that coordination part of the leverage multi-partner solution. Pueblos and the Acequia associations, also it should probably say tribes because the Jicarilla tribe is in the water fund area for the Rio Grande. At the state level, again, the state water agencies and the state land management agencies both participating. Soil and water conservation districts, the private organization New Mexico Watershed and Dam Owners Coalition, which for 2 years in a row has supported this project financially. The national labs contributing scientific expertise. Up in the upper right, we have the Department of Insurance. Superintendent John Franchini is very interested in this issue. Insurance companies are finding that their losses are increasing somewhat for fire, especially for flooding. There may be something there that really helps with the statewide funding mechanisms, such as a match coming from the insurance industry. That's something we're working on now. The interim committees are mentioned. Agricultural users such as the Farm Bureau and cattle growers have been discussing this, are engaged with us, and we were
actively supporting this.
Great, I haven't heard that, but that's really great news. I guess that's as of earlier in the week or last week?
As of this afternoon.
Great. It's a work in progress, as you can see. Private lands, there's a group organized in the Chama headwaters called the Chama Keep Land Alliance, and then the Land Grant Council, because a lot of these lands are former land grants. I think that's our endpoint.
Yeah, well, one thing that really helped get the water fund started for the Nature Conservancy was some corporate donations. We talked about, you know, in Quito, Ecuador, how Coca-Cola really helped get this started. In New Mexico, Lowe's Home Improvement donated a sizable chunk of money to get this done. You know, they have a concern with that. P&M, Wells Fargo, and the Bank of Albuquerque are all bringing skin to the game. You know, the economy of New Mexico matters to them. So, with that, we can take questions, comments, discussion, and whatever's needed.
I had a question about, is your sense that the money that the state holds, if you have a water fund, then that area would be a priority to get that funding, or would it be viewed as, well, you already have funds, so we're gonna give it somewhere else?
I think the water fund isn't going to be able to raise enough to have the ladder. You already have money, therefore we're going to put it somewhere else. part of the problem that we're trying to address is that the funding that exists currently, which is not insubstantial, and including $6.2 million of new state money that went to New Mexico State Forestry this past year. One of the issues, though, is that money gets scattered everywhere. And that's part of what keeps us at the scale we're at now. So in order to scale up, it has to be somewhat contiguous, or Brent and other forest industry members they can't make that work economically. So I think we've been explaining that fairly clearly to the legislature, that scaling up in a set number of places, take care of the problem, and then move on to the next, is how this needs to be undertaken.
So there is, and you saw it in the map, there is a prioritization. And, part of that prioritization, part of what we're trying to bring is that, let's put enough resources in some of these areas at one time to get things moving at the scale they need to be. Spreading things out. And actually, the NRCS and the Forest Service had started that in these mountains with what we're calling the Isleta project. It's Chile land grant, Isleta Pueblo, 2 different ranger districts of the forest, and they're starting to treat part of the landscape. NRCS brought some money on the private land side, the Forest Service brought some on the public land side, and they're starting to work together in a way. The local soil and water districts bringing money to the table. The pieces are coming together. People get this. And part of it is setting yourself up as a community, as one of the areas that will draw those additional resources to you to make yourself a priority, honestly. Cindy?
I have a question, and I don't want this to be taken out of context, please. But I've lived here long enough to see where all these fabulous things take place north of I-40. And it seems like us stepchildren south of I-40, we're always second fiddle. When do you project that you'll start seeing some projects of this caliber occurring south of I-40?
That's part of why we're here today. I will tell you, what I have seen, I have told Laura, I have told a lot of the state agencies, this area is ready for this. We've got community ready to engage. I think we've got downstream water users ready to engage, either agricultural users or communities, especially in the Pecos. The two of us can't do it. The people in this room, the people in this community, the people in this county, counties, they can pull together and make themselves part of that priority. And they need to do it. I think we all know they need to do it.
We'll
But
help.
the state is very aware of this area.
I just have a question. When you showed that sludge coming through the apple orchard, what kind of protection do we really have our mountain protecting us if we get 4 inches of rain like Roswell got 2 weeks ago? If we get 4 inches of rain on that mountain in a matter of a couple of hours, what do we have to look forward to?
Well,
Run for height.
Yeah, unfortunately, Carolyn, I don't know that we have any protection from that. Depending upon where the rains hit, if it hits in the right canyons up there.
Yeah.
Because post Little Bear Fire, we've had monsoonal rains, but we haven't had anything huge.
We've been
And-
lucky not
and
to get rain.
I do know that as time progresses, the amount of sediment that will come down decreases, but I think we certainly are still very much at risk for a large incident like that. And that's one of the things that where we try to, with putting the sediment ponds in and those types of things in the higher country, is it gonna stop all of it? Not, but if we can contain some of it, that's what we hope that we can do. And Dave may be able to answer that much that we can do other than prepare as best we can with being able to go in and the vegetation coming back and some of that soil being able to actually stay put once the rains come.
So this, some of the science shows, and it depends on your rainfall, but it's taken at least 5, if not up to 10, for those watersheds to significantly stabilize where that tremendous risk of flooding isn't there. And I don't mean to be Mr. Doom, but the forest, if we haven't done something or they haven't already burned, in New Mexico, I was running some numbers. I think we burn about 20% of our forests in the last few decades. We've got a lot more forests to burn. If they haven't burned yet, or we haven't actively managed them to not burn in a high intensity wildfire, they will burn. It's just when. So, you know, it's not just the watershed we have right now that's burned, it's the next watershed that burns, and we're gonna have the same thing. I mean, it's a vicious cycle, but it's, we know what to do. We have enough information to act. We just need to act. Dick?
Brent, one of the things that we run into here is, of course, supply. Most of the supply here is on the national forest. So in order to make this happen, were there gonna have to be some changes in the operating procedures of the laws at the national level to enable some of these products to become available?
No, we can't rely upon the federal laws to change. We can't wait for that to happen. As part of the water fund, we realized that, you know, the agency, in particular the Forest Service, has a capacity. And a lot of times they are at their capacity. So one of the things that we're trying to do, and part of our quote-unquote fundraising, especially with state and local communities, is to try to increase that capacity, not by giving money to the agency, but assisting them with NEPA compliance, assisting them with prep. We actually have contract crews doing marking out there right now that we're developing in the state. We've got cruising crews that are being developed to increase the agency capacity that's there. And we have to move, you know, we have to move NEPA compliance forward. You know, the Forest Service will continue moving forward, the agencies will continue moving forward. We need to assist increasing that capacity, getting those acres ready, getting that treatment done, getting that supply available so that industry has some reliability. I mean, it's all interconnected. There's a lot of details there, you know that.
But if we wait for Congress to take action, we'll be at 40% of forest loss, or 60%.
Right.
So we're trying to, that's part of the pragmatic, solution-oriented approach. We're trying to figure out what can we do with the current set of laws to move things forward.
Well, we applaud you because we were actually seeing this thing back in the 70s and 80s, that something's need to be done about the densities of the vegetations and getting new products and those kind of things. And it's come to the point where fire's kind of forced us into the corner that
Right.
You was first.
Would wilderness areas also be treated in this same manner?
Go.
Not initially, but I've done a lot of work on the analysis of the wilderness policy, and also looked at the differences between the Department of Interior agencies' interpretation of the Wilderness Act and the Forest Service interpretation through their manual as opposed to DOI's manual. And it's pretty clear that the Wilderness Act does allow active management to protect the wilderness character. And the science is also very clear that the current condition of forests is not anything close to the natural condition. Park Service is already using that interpretation to do some pretty large acres of management in wilderness. It's my understanding from some correspondence with the Espanola District Ranger on the Santa Fe National Forest that on Monday they posted a record of decision for management of the Pecos Wilderness where it overlaps with the Santa Fe Watershed. I haven't been online to make sure it was posted then, but if that is, if they actually did it, then that's the first record of decision in New Mexico for active management of wilderness. No, it does not involve the machine that he drives, but it is active management.
And out of wilderness, we will likely not see product come out of those. The material we put down, it'll be prescribed or that won't be available for use is the likelihood that we see happening. But we are seeing some action happening in wilderness. And to make sure that they've been counsel me a little bit, I'll give you my perspective. I also read the Wilderness Act, and I've seen the rules and policy that's been made around it. And I think in order to ensure the wild character that people saw in these wilderness areas and wanted to protect, I think we're losing some of that, and I think we're gonna start seeing some interpretations to maintain or return those wild characteristics that are desirable.
So initially, the roadless areas would need to be,
There again, the roadless area is rulemaking, and it can be reinterpreted at any time. Honestly, out on the landscape, we've got roaded areas, we've got accessible areas, we've got a whole lot to do that can strategically be done and start to change the direction of the problem, change the way the wildfires are happening. The roadless areas, we can look at those down the road, but I think we're maybe even 20 years away from that, of really having to make some of those decisions on what we do with both roadless areas. And you have to look at it in the landscape. Where are the strategic watersheds that provide water supplies? Where are the communities? And we make those decisions on a case-by-case basis, not across the board, across the state, across the West, or across the nation.
Two questions, real quick. How are the municipalities, Albuquerque for instance, funding this? Would it be coming out of their general fund, the part that they're contributing, or are they adding a cost somewhere to citizens? And question number two is, with the upcoming Water and Natural Resources Committee meeting on July 1st, is there anything we as citizens can do? Do we need to contact those committee members at this point, or is it too early?
Why don't I answer the first one and the second one?
Okay.
So as far as the Albuquerque Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority, so far what they have done is contributed funding to studies. They have a citizen advisory board that met and discussed this recently, and one of the board members is also one of the UNM economics department professors, and she has completed a study of willingness to pay. So it's sort of a survey of people in the utilities service area explaining this issue, explaining that they, if they were asked to pay for treatments of watersheds that are, and then showed this map and kind of made it clear that the watersheds were away from Albuquerque. They weren't, right there on the Sandias. And so asked the question, how much would you be willing to pay? And it came up with really strong numbers. Don't quote me on this, it's sort of ballpark. If I recall this, it was something like 70% of the water users were willing to pay $1 to $2 a month, which would raise something on the order of $3 to $6 million a year. So that would be really substantial towards that goal of 20-some million for the water fund area. I would also say that that was the citizen board that was responded very positively to that. It's a long way from the citizen board to getting the utilities board to actually agree to that. I think it's gonna take 2 to 3 years.